So let's go ahead and talk about the last piece here, which is going to be executing queries. Because I think executing queries is actually going to be the part where everything sort of comes together and we're able to sort of really understand what's happening, why the queries are structured the way they are, and it actually helps us understand queries better. So just to sort of reiterate the idea here, that what happens under the hood is we take that query that we made and we run each feature through the query, right? So, right, for each feature in a data set. Right, and again, keep in mind when we say feature, we mean row of attribute table. Right, so for each feature in the data set, right, we run the query. Right, if true, feature is selected. Right, if false, feature is not selected. Okay. So basically, again, right, what we're going to be doing is we've built our query. We're going to look at each feature or each row. If we run that through and it comes back true, meaning that the comparison is correct, then we select it. That's a feature that we want to consider. If it is false, then we don't, then it's not selected. So this is sort of the fundamental under the hood of how the selection or attribute queries work. So let's go ahead and look at a couple of examples here. So we have our attribute table from earlier on, and we're going to look at the example. We're going to execute the query of st equals al. And what I'm going to do here is if it passes, I'm going to put a green mark. If it fails, I'm going to put a red mark. So st equals al. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the state variable. So that's going to be this column here, right? So we're looking at this column here. And then we're going to look for whether or not each row has an st value of al. So in this case, right, this one's good, this one's good, this one's good, right? No, 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 no. Right, and you can see that all I'm doing is I'm looking and I'm saying, does this value match al? Right. So at the end of the day, what we get back is we return 3 features. Right. OID 6, 22, and 40. Right. OID 6, OID 22, and OID 40. So that's a pretty straightforward one. Let's go ahead and look at another example. Population 2010 greater than or equal to 1 million. Right, so now in this case, right, we're going to be looking at the pop 2010. Right, we're looking at this variable, and we're going to be saying, is this value greater than or equal to 1 million? And again, I'm just going to run through. If it's not, I'll put a red mark. If it is, I'll put a green. Right, and again, I'm just comparing this value to 1 million. Right, and so in this case, we would get 1, 2, 3, 4 features returned. right, we would return OID 110, OID 1263, (2573) and 3090. All right, let's go ahead and look at another example here. This is a compound query. And this is actually a bit tricky, so I'm actually going to let you try to think through this really quickly. I know it's not technically a review question, but think through it really quickly before I go through it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do both of them. So I'm going to do the pop class equals 5 in green, and I'm going to do the pop class equals 9 in blue. So anything that equals 5, I'm going to mark it green. Okay. Anything that equals 9, I'm going to mark in blue. Right. So this is the part where the trick comes in. Because we have this and here, right? Because we have this and here, right? This means that a feature must meet all queries, right? So what that means realistically is that we're looking for a feature that has both a green mark and a blue mark, right? The problem is in this case, right, none of them have a green mark or a blue mark. So in this case, we would actually return no features, right? Because none of them meet both the criteria. So I would go out on a limb and say that maybe this was a typo and what we actually meant to do was an or here. So let's go ahead and do the exact same thing again with this slight difference of having the connector be an or rather than an and. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to select, just to keep the colors the same, we're going to select 9 in blue and 5 in green. Right. So now in this case, right, because we have an or here, because the connector in this case is an or, what happens is it only has to meet 1. To be selected. Right. So basically, if it has a green check mark or a blue check mark, we can call it selected. So in this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we return 6 features. Right. I'm not gonna bother grabbing the object IDs here. But the idea is that by switching from and to or, we now get features, whereas the previous one, we didn't get any. Let's look at one more example. Pop class equals 10 and capital equals state. So in this case, we're actually looking at 2 different variables, and we're making comparisons against 2 different values. So let's go ahead and just like before, I'll mark the pop class in green, and I will mark the capital in blue. So pop class, we're looking at the pop class variable, and we're saying, is the pop class equal to 10? So pop class is equal to 10 here, 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 and here. right? So if I'm going too fast, pause the video, go back and rewatch, make sure you understand how I'm doing that, right? The idea is that we're comparing pop class to 10. If it's true, if it equals 10, we mark it. If not, we don't, right? So then the second query here is capital equals state. So in this case, right, we're looking at the capital variable and we're saying, is it state? Right? And so again, right, we have this AND connector, which means that you have to meet both. Right, which means that in order for us to select it, it has to have both a green and a blue. And the only place that meets both green and blue is this one here, right? Because this has blue but not green, right? This has green but not blue. The only place that has green and blue is this one right here, which is Phoenix. Right, so this returns one feature. It's the OID of Phoenix, which is 110. Right? So hopefully that made sense. Let's go ahead and quickly do a couple of review questions. So for these review questions, we're going to be using a slightly different attribute table than the one we just did. We're actually using this attribute table over here. So in this case, we're talking about a data set of invasive of species. Some of them are invasive, some of them aren't, and we have two different measures: the height of the individual tree and the width of the trunk at breast height. So the questions are going to basically be how many features result from a query. So in this case, right, how many features or how many individuals would be returned from the query invasives equals no. So go ahead, pause the video, work through the answer, and then we'll come back through and discuss. Okay, so the idea here is invasive equals no. We're looking at this variable here, the invasive variable, and we're basically saying, does this variable equal no? And we know that it does here through here, right? All of these are invasive equals no. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So this is going to return 13 features. Right. So hopefully that made sense. This was just a basic query. Let's go ahead and try something a little more complicated. Let's try this one. So in this case, how many features would be returned given this query? So go ahead, pause the video, give it a shot, and then we'll come back and return. Okay, so this one has the operator not equal. Right, and with not equal, basically we're returning everything where the location is not locust. So basically everything that's not locust. So this, everything that is not locust. Right. So I'm going to cheat a little bit and use the IDs as the count. So this is going to return 26. All right. Let's do one more. It's going to be slightly more complicated. Let's do this one right here. So we have this is the query, and let's go ahead and see what comes when we do that. Okay, So for this one, we have 3 separate queries. We have this query here. We have this query here. And then we have this query here. So I'm going to just quickly go through and check each one based on the color. So species equals tree of heaven. That's going to mark this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. Right? Or species equals locus. Right? And because these are connected with or, we would return all of these. So as of right now, we have 16 features. But we can't stop here because we have this other query here, this diameter at breast height, or DBH, greater than or equal to 10. So that's going to grab this one, this one, this one, right? And so what happens is, because this is an and, it means it has to meet these two, one of these two, and this one. So basically it has to either be red and yellow or blue and yellow to be returned, right? And so if we count up the ones that are like that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we had 16 that met the species requirements, but only 11. Let me just recount that to make sure. Yep. We only had 11 features returned. So hopefully that made sense, this idea that we have this part up here being an or, and this part down here being an and, the way that we would proceed with that. So hopefully this all made sense. And as always, if you have any questions, please reach out. Thank you.